Hello and welcome to Lesson 2 of Module 1, Part 2. This is Candace, of course. You probably figured that out by now. So in this lesson, we'll be troubleshooting diffusion, as I promised in the last lesson. So let's, just jump right into it. I remember John, one of my clients, said to me one day, "Diffusion doesn't work." And I asked him, "Well, what do you mean?" Well, he said, "I had to give this presentation at work in front of about 50 people. My mind kept telling me I was going to screw up and make a fool of myself, so I tried those diffusion techniques, but they did nothing." So I asked him, "You mean you kept buying into the story that you'd screw up?" And he said, "No, it helped with that. I stopped taking it seriously." So I said, "Then why did you say diffusion doesn't work?" And he said, "Because I still felt anxious." So I explained to John that even though I had dozens of talks in public, I still feel anxious every time I get up there. And every person that I've ever asked if they get anxious doing talks, their answer is always yes. And these are people who have given hundreds of talks. The point is, if you're going to put yourself in any sort of challenging situation, if you're going to take any significant risk, then anxiety is a normal emotion. It will be there. And diffusing negative thoughts is not going to get rid of it. You see, John fell into the trap of trying to use diffusion as a control strategy, as a way of trying to make his experience different than it actually was. Remember, a control strategy is any attempt to change, to avoid, or get rid of unwanted thoughts and feelings. Control strategies become problematic when they're used excessively or inappropriately, or in situations where they can't work, or when they reduce our quality of life in the long term. Diffusion, on the other hand, is the very opposite of a control strategy. It's an acceptance strategy. Rather than attempting to change, avoid, or get rid of unpleasant thoughts and feelings, our aim is to accept them. Okay, there's a big difference there. Acceptance doesn't mean that you have to like your anxious thoughts. It just means you stop struggling with them. When you stop wasting your energy on trying to change, avoid, or get rid of them, you can put that energy into something more useful instead. Okay, so let me use an analogy to help illustrate what I mean. Imagine you live in a small country that shares a border with a hostile neighbor. Okay, there's a long-standing tension between the two countries. The neighboring country has a different religion and a different political system, and your country sees it as a major threat. Okay, so there's three possible scenarios, basically, for how your country can relate to its neighbor. Now, the worst case scenario is war. Your country attacks and the other one retaliates. As both countries get pulled into a major war, the people of both nations suffer. Think of any major war and the huge costs involved in terms of life, money, and well-being. Another scenario, better than the first, but still far from satisfactory, is a temporary truce. Both countries agree to cease fire, but there's no reconciliation. Resentment seethes beneath the surface, and there's the constant underlying threat that war will break out again. The third possibility is genuine peace. You acknowledge your differences and allow them just to be. This doesn't get rid of the other country, nor does it mean that you necessarily like the other country or even want it there, nor does it mean that you approve of its politics or religion. But because you're no longer at war, you can now use your money and resources to build up the infrastructure in your own country instead of squandering them on the battlefield. The first scenario, war, is like the struggle to get rid of unwanted, anxious thoughts. It's a battle that can never be won, and it consumes a huge amount of your time and energy. The second scenario, a truce, is definitely better, but it's still a long way from true acceptance. It's more the grudging tolerance. There's no sense of moving forward to a new future. Although there's no active warfare, the hostility remains, and you're kind of resigned to the ongoing tension. A grudging tolerance of thoughts and feelings is better than outright struggle, but it leaves you feeling stuck and somewhat helpless. It's a sense more of resignation than of acceptance, of entrapment rather than freedom, of being stuck rather than moving forward. The third scenario, peace, represents true acceptance. Notice that in this scenario, your country doesn't have to like the other country, approve of it being there, convert to its religion, or learn to speak its language. You simply make peace with them. You acknowledge your differences, you give up trying to change their politics or religion, and you focus your efforts on making your own country a better place to live in. It's the same when you truly accept your anxious thoughts. You don't have to like them, want them, or approve of them. You simply make peace with them and let them be. And this leaves you free to focus your energy on taking action. Action that moves your life forward in a direction you value. Okay, so if you're getting stuck up in the thought that, hey, this diffusion strategy isn't working because I'm still feeling anxious, check in with yourself and ask yourself, am I expecting this to be a control strategy? Okay, so look at this as a troubleshooting option for you. Another issue that's really common is I get clients asking me, well, so what if I've diffused a thought and it doesn't leave? I diffused a thought but it didn't leave. Again, diffusion isn't about getting rid of thoughts. It's about seeing them for what they really are and making peace with them, allowing them to be there without fighting them. Sometimes they will go away with very little fuss. Other times they're going to hang out for quite a while. And sometimes they'll go away and then they'll come back. So the point is, once you allow them to be there without a struggle, you can put your energy and attention into activities you value. But if you expect that diffusing your thoughts will make them go away, you're setting yourself up for disappointment. You're falling back into the social confidence gap. So if you find yourself struggling with an anxious or negative thought, just notice it. Pretend that you're a curious scientist observing your own mind. Notice the different ways in which you struggle. Do you judge your thoughts as good or bad, true or false, positive or negative? Do you try to push them away or replace them with better ones? Do you enter into a debate with them? Observe your struggle with interest and notice what it accomplishes. Ask yourself, is this working for me? It's important to let go of any expectation that your stories will go away, or even to show up less frequently. As it happens, very often they will go away. But if you're diffusing them to make them go away, then by definition, you're not truly accepting them. And as we talked about earlier, you know where that leads. So remember, thoughts are merely words, symbols, and bits of language. What's the point of declaring war on them? Our aim is to increase our self-awareness, to recognize when we're fusing with our thoughts, and to catch ourselves when it happens. Once we have that awareness, we then have a much greater choice as to how we act. If thoughts are helpful, make use of them. If they're unhelpful, then diffuse them. And keep in mind that the diffusion techniques we've covered so far are like those inflatable armbands young children use in swimming pools. Once you can swim, you don't need them anymore. The idea is that later on, as you incorporate the other ideas within this program, you can diffuse your thoughts without giving them too much attention at all. You can be thoroughly engaged in your work, a conversation, or any other meaningful activity to you, and when an anxious thought pops into your head, you can instantly see it for what it is, let it come and go without it distracting you. So to sum this all up, at the heart of troubleshooting any diffusion issue is this fact. Diffusion is not a tool to control your thoughts. let go of the control agenda. Letting go of that control agenda is like clearing the windshield using your car wipers. You're going to be able to see the effectiveness and results of diffusion much more clearly when you do this. Okay, so let go of the control agenda. We'll be coming back to diffusion again and again over the rest of this program, so not to worry, you'll have plenty of opportunity to continue practicing diffusion. In the next video though, I want to cover what I call psychological smog, which can be especially troublesome for a lot of people, and especially troublesome form of anxious thinking. So we'll talk about what psychological smog is, how to identify if you experience it, and how to clear that smog away. So I'll see you in the next video.